All right, I'm here with my dad, Fixie, and I thought this would be a fun thing, one for all the fans of Dad's work, and then also my students ask questions about it, and so I thought it might be fun to do a video about Dad's steam shovel. And so we got some pictures put together, kind of in a slideshow, and we can show you some of the pictures, and Dad's going to mostly tell you what's going on and what progress has been made this year. But we're actually going to start off with some history about how things got to be this way. So I guess let's look at the first picture, Dad, and you can tell us kind of what's going on here.
Well, this is the THEW steam shovel. It was left underwater. Actually, was helping build the dam back in the early 20s. And at the end of its, when it was done with its portion of the project, they kind of painted themselves in a corner where they really couldn't get it out other than going up over the top of the bank. So they just kind of got it out of the way. It got stuck. And that's pretty much where she sat for 95 years underwater. My father found out about it in '75 and was going to try to retrieve her from the water. I was 11 years old in a boat riding around with him as we were searching for it in Wixom Lake. So then the photo you see now is in 2020 when the unfortunate accident of the dam breach and the water left. My brother and I went down there 2 days after the water left and kind of looked at the crane, and that's when I decided that I was going to keep it and rebuild it and try to save it. There's only 2 known left in the world. This one and the one that Bob Kelly owns in Pennsylvania.
So it wasn't like it wasn't always the plan for you to restore it, right? You were going to pull it out and potentially get it to Bob Kelly or something along those lines. So what flipped or caused that change?
That was originally, yeah, I told Bob if we could get it out, give him first dibs on it. But then when I laid there in bed one night and asked myself a couple questions, what do I do for a living? I repair heavy equipment. I weld, and I have a full machine shop. And I guess I kind of went with that to keep going. Someone made the comment before. They told me, it says, you obviously must have felt a faint heartbeat still left in the machine to say, yeah, I can save this.
Yeah.
So that's and the kind of the funny thing about it is when we did a short interview with a local phone interview with a news interview, and my brother, after we got done with the interview, I went and walked around the shovel one more time after thinking that there was nothing there to do with it or save it. And he looked at me and says, I can see it in your eyes. And I'll just tell you right now, he says, I don't have the time nor the need to think I need to rebuild the steam shovel. So he says, I'll back you 100% what you do. So it was, I went after it. I fought with the government for a little bit because Eagle wanted it left there as a fish habitat because they figured it had been in the lake long enough that it needed to stay there. And I was able to convince them to let me get it out. And actually the family that owns it, the McKimmey family, after talking to them, they kind of just wanted it left there too until they found out I was the one that was interested in getting it out and rebuilding it, because their dad was the one that signed it over to my dad in '75.
So, there's a little teeny red dot, and that's where it was left. Any clue why it was left in that spot? I assume is that one of the deepest. That couldn't be the deepest spot in the reservoir.
It was deeper because the original river was just to the northwest of that dot a little bit, because you can see where the dam is at by the river. And then the breach you can see the outline of the sandbar there where it was actually digging in to make the embankment behind it that washed out. So that's actually right where it was working and performing its job to help build the reservoir for the Wixom Lake Dam for the generation plant.
And we actually have the picture here. Where did this picture come from, or what are we actually looking at here?
I went through the archives at the Sanford Museum of all the pictures of the lake bed, and actually came across a picture of my shovel in 1924 working in the bottom of Wixom Lake. There were several other steam shovels down there, and I'm going through pictures of those, but this had a unique boom design on it with a horizontal crowd that you could pick out that this was my machine in the lake.
So you say there's a unique boom design. Is that like any clue how unique it was? Was it like just this model, or were there more steam shovels that made that? Was it like a custom thing, or do you have any clue on that?
This machine was designed by Captain THEW. He was an iron ore captain, and if you know how a regular shovel works, it's got a long dipper stick in it, and it swings on an arc when you dig. Well, back in the days, they were tearing up so many docks because you couldn't hold a straight grade with that bucket. So this one, with the horizontal crowd, the bucket will move from the front of the shovel out 5 foot straight, then up. So it wasn't tearing up a lot of the docks, and a lot of people, it was a popular machine, I was told, because of that, being able to grade out 5 foot, then up to hold a level floor instead of trying to dig on an arc all the time and try to get something level.
And you said that there's only 2 of these in existence. I have to imagine that they manufactured more, but how are there only 2 left?
Well, this one was saved because it was underwater for 95 years, because this was all before World War II. So if this would have been out in the open anywhere, it would have been most generally cut up for scrap. Bob Kelly's was found, he found his on a dead-end road in Canada with an old guy with a shotgun that probably wasn't going to let anybody take his machine. So that's one thing that saved this machine, is it was underwater and nobody knew it was, that people knew it was there, but there was just no way of really getting it out of the water. I'd gotten several, it was fun once this project got rolling, of getting emails and a few messages from other people that said, you know, we always knew it was there, always heard it was there. We used to go out when we were kids and we used to dive on this thing and see if we could jump down the boat and touch it. Prior to about the mid-70s, there was probably at least a foot of the boom that used to stick up out of the water when they did the drawdown for the spring thaw, so they had capacity to take on the thaw and not flood the dam. But part of the structure must have broke sometime along that line, and the boom dropped down and the bucket dropped down, and it was never seen again. Mike Furlow, the auctioneer up in that area, used to scuba dive on this when he was 17 years old, and he's the one that told my father where the machine was at, so he knew exactly where it was at because he used to dive on it.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of the bucket, that was one of the things that you worked on this year. What was the process like for restoring this part specifically, like restoring the bucket? What kind of work had to be done?
Unbelievably, there was very little to the bucket itself that needed done. I had a couple cracks I addressed, but other than that, once we got the thing pulled off, got it out to Homestead there where they're letting me do the sandblasting, and sandblasted it all up and got the thing home and threw a coat of primer on it. It was, the bucket itself is in good shape. The gate, you can see that the gate is missing on the back that you trip to dump and empty the bucket. It's in rough shape, but if you figure how many times, it's like an opening door, how many times it opened and
With
closed.
the currents?
Well, no, just as it was working. Because every time you tripped it with a bucket, then it would just slam shut. and then all the material that was going across it. So then the bale you can see out in the front that's primered, the pins, and it needs just a little bit of help to just make it a little bit tighter. But we're going to, everything is going to be original that's going back on it.
At least in terms of the bucket.
In terms of the bucket, yes, currently.
And so you also, so this is what, THEW red, or what's the color for this guy?
I am basically just copying the colors that Bob Kelly has painted his machine. I wasn't gonna. There's going to be differences between his and mine, because we had that discussion. He said, "It's your shovel. You build it the way you want. This is, my shovel. We build it the way I wanted." So, but right now the color scheme, I'm following what Bob Kelly did with his, because Bob Kelly also has an electric one, and I'm sure he's going to paint it up the same color as his steam shovel. So I thought we'll continue with that, and it's all Sherwin-Williams paint, and the only color I can spray is the black. So everything I've been painting by hand in a brush, in a roller. So it's been a fun project. Then when you think back in 1907, close to when this was built, air sprayers weren't even invented yet.
Yeah. So they were all by hand.
So it was either dipped or painted by hand to start with. So it's fun for me to go back and do a lot of this old school, how they used to, it used to be done. Yeah. Compared to having robots, and I'm sure, with what you do, you're working on the current stuff, to keep up with the times and stuff like that. And I'm basically in my time machine, and I just set it for 1907, and I'm back out doing it the old way.
Well, I know. So this next picture is the whole boom. I know that you've had trouble getting the primer for it now. Like it's one of those things that the primer is illegal in 15 states or something along those lines.
I've got my paperwork all filled out, and I'm allowed to purchase my primer and black and red paint. So we're good to go. So.
Yes. So what are we looking at here on the
this
boom?
This is the boom, and you can see. I guess it's hard without a pointer or whatever, but you can see the horizontal crowd where it would slide back and forth.
Here you can laser point right now.
And it slid right across that area right there.
Yeah.
And that's where the boom would go and travel out. So then this one steam engine would mount on the very back side where that opening is at, would mount there to run that, and then the cable would go up across the tip of the boom, and then run your bucket up and down. So that we took out, sandblasted, and cut off a lot of material that was more so damaged by years of running it than what it was by damage by the water. And
you can tell the difference because of the way it's worn out, or?
Yeah, because it looked like someone took a hammer to it, and it was just beat and wore out and had edges rolled up and everything else. And so all that stuff was removed. It's currently, we built some parts. With the next picture there, you can see was fortunate enough to have both my boys, you and your brother, come help me as we made parts. New parts, all the new steel, the channel irons and stuff like that for the boom to replace what was damaged or worn out.
How much, if you go back real quick, how much is still the same on this then versus how much was basically recreated?
Everything right there that you see in that picture is going to stay that way.
Okay, so
it's going to be the original, and I will be putting all the rivets back in it. Currently, it's just being bolted back together until I get all my tooling I need for riveting, and then we'll start hammering rivets back in. I've got a forge that I can heat the rivets up in to pound them and put a button head on both sides. I found a supplier down in Detroit to get my rivets. Then I'm also, like I said before, I'm going old school. I've got a hand forge that I will put coal in, and I'll heat the rivets up in an old hand forged, and we'll pound the rivets back into
the old original way.
Yep.
Yeah, and I should also point out the OSHA violation there. I probably should have my hair tied up, but yeah. Yeah, and it was cool, kind of how we went through and took some of the parts that existed and basically just took pieces of cardboard and things like that to transfer holes and figure out relative dimensions. I mean, we took some measurements to validate that we were getting the right same exact thing. But
and then put pieces in the saw because we had, and then all the steel that I'm cutting off this boom or off this machine in general, I will be saving. I'm not scrapping any of the steel that come off, because that's what a lot of people said. You know, the amount of scrap I'm going to generate for that I removed for this, so I could use that money to rebuild it. But I want to save all this stuff because a lot of it, you know, it means somewhat because the word Cambria is still stamped in the steel, and I want to save that because it was a steel company in Pennsylvania that where all this steel was made at, and then I think they sold out to Bethlehem Steel, then U.S. Steel bought them out.
yeah.
So I'm trying to save the history of that too, to have those markings still in the steel.
Yeah.
So
It's also kind of a fun fact because we're recording this up in the Keweenaw in the UP, and you actually found some Lorraine steel up at Eagle River. Do you remember that?
Up we have the Cambria Steel Company.
There's an old train bridge.
There's a walking bridge up there that I just happened to be walking. Wife and I were walking around on, and you could see the marking on it, just clear as day. Cambria Steel, marked right in it. So it was cool to know that, you know. So that came from Pennsylvania. All that steel for that bridge up there came from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so in this picture right here, looks like torching out rivets or cleaning out holes, or what's going on here?
Yeah, this is the lower frame. So this is kind of your main frame structure that holds the front axle, the rear axle. And it's got your steering mechanism, everything else on. I was replacing, cutting out the rivets so I could replace a couple beams in the front, because as much as I want to save and keep original, I still have to make the integrity of the machine sound to support the weight, because it weighs 19 ton when it's complete. So if you got all that weight sitting on these axle mounts and everything else, it's got to be structurally sound, because I don't want to get hurt and I don't want to hurt anybody else. So I'm going through and we put new beams in there, and like I said, then we'll knock all the rivets back in it when we get done. Currently, right now, I've got over 100 rivets to put in. So
what? So there. This is just an oxyacetylene torch. But what was the other thing when I was helping you out that we were using for popping out the rivets?
We were using what's called an air arc, which has a carbon. It's a copper clad. It's wrapped with copper, and it's a carbon rod, and it's pretty much like it's an unwelder, is what you can almost call it. Because as you strike it, as you turn it up at high amperage and you go across the bead of the weld, there's 100 psi of air or higher on the bottom side of it. And as it makes that arc and ignites that, the air blows it away. And I mean, as you've seen, it's a wicked,
blowing molten metal all over the place.
It's wicked. I've got burns because that's all I've done for years, and I've got burns all over because that stuff just flies. You have some control of which direction it's going to go, but as soon as it ricochets off another piece of metal, it's coming back at you, down your back, down your sleeves, in your pockets. But that's a couple of the beams. The one beam I replaced in the front. You can see part of the steering mechanism in this picture. The steering wheel, crank is.
That's this right here.
Yep, that's actually how you steered it. Is a guy stood in front of the machine as it was going towards you or away from you, and you turned it. It's a system that's used just like the old steam tractors, of having one chain wraps around that bar one direction and another chain wraps around the other direction, and then it goes to the front axle and around to the back. So as you turn that shaft, It lengthens one chain and shortens the other one, which will turn your axle back and forth, and which is a really handful, because one of my other videos you can see on Facebook that I was steering Bob Kelly's machine when we brought it up to pile here a couple of years ago, and it's a challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine. Is it like, so it is it powered steering per se, or like how much work do you have to go into cranking that?
You can't crank it when it's sitting still. The only
Yeah.
time you can really crank it is when it's moving.
Yeah.
Now, see, with the chain system, when it's all said and done, on the upper frame that you'll see pictures of that I'm working on, you could actually take the chains and hook them to that mechanism, to that linkage, and you could steer it by turning the house. But still, Bob says, they've tried it, and he says it works so much faster just to have someone stand up in front and crank the thing, steer it with it. But it was cool. I mean, like I said, that's the original handle from 1907, 1908, wherever the machine was built. We're not completely sure what year it was built, because we have not found the serial number plate yet. But I'm hoping to go back and dig one more time where this was at, and hoping to find that and a couple other parts that I'm missing for the drivetrain to make it self-propelled.
What, I mean, we're going to get to the steam engines, but what do you think is going to be the hardest thing to replicate that's going to have to be replicated?
I don't know. Something that's going to be time consuming and it's going to be very important is in the next picture. You can see the large gear, and then the surface below it is where the upper half rides on wheels. That surface has a lot of wear in it from the water.
Oh, okay.
And so that's all got to be welded up by hand. And then I've already kind of come up with an idea of how to machine it back flat, because it's got to be square with the center post that runs up the center there, that you can see on that.
So you're talking about
that surface there.
Resurfacing this.
No, right down below the gears there, right there is got to be a flat surface, and it's got to be square with the shaft that sticks up in the center there. Because then that's the upper frame sits on that and has 4 big steel wheels that has to roll around. So that's probably going to be a more challenging thing. And then all 4 wheels that roll on that upper half are worn out and are different sizes. So I've got to build those all up, machine them so they're all the same size. But when we get to the steam engines, that was going to be the big one if there was any problems with those.
Mm-hmm. So, so right here, you're painting one of the wheels red, and you kind of said like really the only way you can do this stuff is by painting by hand, or the way you're choosing to do it. But also, is there something that's going to have to go on the exterior of the wheels here, or what was on there before with those holes?
I removed them. Yes, there's you can actually see kind of the outline of a rectangle that was bolted there. So these are the back wheels, because you can see up above my arm there's a dog where the other half of the drive mechanism plugs into that to drive the wheel.
Talking about right here?
Nope, right there. Yeah. There's those 2 notches. There's another another set that looks just like that dog's in there to drive the wheels. And but there's pads that you can bolt on there. They're 1/2 inch thick by 3 inches wide, and they'll be your grouser bars to give you some traction. And then on the front wheels also has the holes in it, and you could either put the bars on it, or you could just put bolts in it to make like best reference you can make is like snowmobiles up here is putting studs in it, because this machine weighed 19 ton and the wheels were only 15 inches wide. So the machine was going in one direction, and that's down. Yeah. So it had to be planked. That's why it normally took a crew of 4 to run this. You had one guy running the machine itself. You had one guy in the back that was tending the fire, watching your water, and then greasing and oiling the machine as you went. And you had 2 guys on the ground that kept moving your planks just so you could stay and not sink and get stuck like it ended up in the bottom of Wixom Lake.
I mean, did you find wood planks underneath the shovel, or?
We did not find any planks, but there were pieces of logs and everything else. So they tried shoving stuff underneath there, and it
To
just
get it unstuck.
to get it back up to where they could possibly pull it out with a team of horses, but it had a 16-foot bank. I mean, you were there when we pulled it out, and we were able to cut a road down there with a dozer to pull everything all up. Well, in 1924, you didn't have, a John Deere dozer that you could hook onto it. I mean, there were tractors, tractors available, but to pull it up a 19-ton machine up a hill that high was.
Because I remember the story I have in my head has changed a little bit, because I remember you saying that it had been left out there for insurance reasons, or maybe it wasn't you that said it, or you'd heard that, but now you kind of think that's a debunked theory that it was left there for.
Yeah, that was just kind of something that was kicked around, but it was definitely they painted themselves in a corner.
Yeah.
If you brought it in one end of the lake, then built a dike behind you.
Yeah,
You got a river on one side of you. You got a 16-foot bank that you're digging in. And then you got a huge embankment to retain the water on the back side of you. There's only one way out, and that's up a 16-foot bank. So, they were able to get all the other machines out. I mean, that was what's kind of funny. The first day, the day that my brother and I went out there, that's what people said. Oh, there was, that shovel is out here, isn't it? And yep. Talked to him for a little bit. Well, where's the crane and all there's supposed to be a train and all the cars. And it's like, if you can't see it now, it's not here.
Yeah. So you're able to get how much of this is complete here that we're looking at in this picture?
In that picture there, you're looking at it. It's sitting. It's blocked up on the front right now, so we could get it loaded up on a trailer. But it's actually on all four wheels. You can see a little bit of the red for the steering wheel in the front. This was getting ready. I got invited down to Heritage Days down in the Port of Monroe for a show that they were having down there to kind of showcase old, history of a lot of stuff. And I was really honored to go down to that show, and it was really cool to see what some of the other stuff that were down there. Some of the oldest tugboat on the Great Lakes was down there. And
so that was like a hybrid show, because you had stuff like on land, but you also had like the boats present.
Everything, yeah. There was old cars. I had steam shovels. They had old tractors. Unfortunately, the 1225, the locomotive that they based the Polar Express on, it was supposed to be there, but they just couldn't get it finished in time. So that was kind of bummed that I didn't get a chance to see the 1225 there.
Yeah. Now I got a video here. So what are we looking at?
This is one of 3 steam engines that were on this machine. This is the crowd engine that actually run the horizontal crowd, like I explained before, back and forth. Well, I spent 8 hours to get it freed up to where it would start rolling over, and then decided one day to just take the rest of it apart after I got it freed up and clean up the valves and tighten up the bolts and see if it would actually run on air. And I was able to get it to run on air, which, put a smile on my face, a huge smile on my face. If it runs on air, it's going to run on steam.
Oh, because what was it that Bob Kelly told you about the engines?
Bob Kelly told me that, he says, if your 3 steam engines are junk, you're just going to build a model. But if your 3 steam engines are good and you can roll over, he says, you can build a shovel, because I basically had a complete machine, because it, joke is, it ran when parked, and so I got everything to build a shovel. You came and helped a couple years back when we cut all the wood for the house. So, but this was pretty exciting. Then even to hear that sound of that chug 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 chug, was really cool. So,
and you got your PBR can there for scale, just so people get an idea how big things are. How clean were the bores on the inside of this? Like,
This was probably the one that had more pits in it, and I ran the hone through it and we kind of cleaned the thing out, but it still isn't good enough shape with the pits that are in it, the small pits that it ran on air. So
Because what's the pressure of the steam going to be like compared to the pressure of the air?
it's actually going to be less, because I was probably running on 120 psi here, if not a little bit more. The shovel, its peak pressure, the operating pressure was 125. Bob Kelly's, we made, because I've gone out the last 2 years and was able to run his. So we maintained the pressure on that. His pop-off valve is set at 125, so we tried not to get over 100. And if you were between 80 and 100, it functioned well. But I've been as low as when we're shutting it down at the end of the day, I've been at 30 pounds of steam pressure.
And still running.
And still, machine will still function.
Huh.
I mean, it's slow, but it will still function. It's unbelievable of what steam pressure you could do with steam pressure. And it's just, it's for, if this is, for me, if it's a dream come true, because I've always been kind of intrigued by steam, how it worked and everything else. And I've always loved old equipment. And to have both of these fall in my lap is a dream come true. I couldn't.
Sure. So, this is kind of your completed list for the year. Is that what we're looking at, or?
This was we were getting ready for a show in July there, and I just kind of had everything out. One of the local guys that's been following this, Jordan Mowbray, was coming out to do an interview, and he kind of wanted some stuff set up. So in the picture, you can clearly see the bucket. Above that is the rear axle, and that's for the wheels I was painting. In an earlier picture, you can see the upper frame then, or the lower frame, I'm sorry, and that was all painted up. You've got down below that is one of the steam engines. Then you've got the front wheel that is painted red. I painted one of those. I cleaned up one of those way early just to keep me, give me something to, look at and say, just to say, okay, look at this, this is done. And then on the pallet there is the front axle, where that wheel goes on, and all the steering, it's part of the steering mechanism. And this is an idea that I was working on. It's kind of based off an idea of coming up here to see you. The smelting plant, we were over by the Portage Canal, and I seen the smelting plant, the reflection in the water. And the Portage Canal was so smooth and stuff like that. The reflection, it was just so awesome. And I took a picture of it and kind of come up with this idea is if we could do something like this with a steam shovel as the one that's in real rough shape and a reflection in the water, kind of actually what it says, what I once was, what I will be again, was pretty cool to have this finally brought to life. And I had a high school student from Beaverton High School who was an art student, M. Wilbur, and she was able to take my idea and was able to draw it up and to make it into a logo, which I think turned out fantastic for this project here. And we've made up a few shirts. I want to get some more made up and possibly sell them and then part of the fund proceeds will go towards the building of the steam shovel.
I mean, that's a good question. How are you currently funding this? Is it all just out of your own pocket, or how's that worked?
There has been majority of it, yes, coming out of my pocket. Have had some donations at some of the shows. I will set up a collection pot and get some donations from people, because there's a lot of people that do believe too that this is a cool project and saving a piece of history like this. And then we've also have a PayPal on the website at wixomlakesteamshovel.com, which I'm sure you'll post all that stuff on here. Yeah. And but no, it is funny sometimes because somebody will just come up and ask me sometimes, how you coming on that shovel? And while I'm talking to them, they'll dig in their wallet, and give me a couple bucks or something like that towards it, and it does truly mean a lot, to keep going through this thing because it's quite an undertaking to do, but
I mean, it's no different than other people's hobbies with fishing and buying new boats and parts for that.
And hunting and everything else, so it's, but I truly enjoy, and it's a thrill just for me to go out and now that I have the thing, all the parts are at my house, and it's just nice. You get home, you have dinner with the wife, and then I'll go skate out, put some Zeppelin on the radio, and crack open a PBR and go out and work for whether it's scraping something or welding on something, building something up, or pulling something apart to keep going on it.
Sure. So this is the top side of the frame that you're looking at here?
Yeah, this is the upper frame. This is the frame that swings on that lower frame where the wheels are on that I explained to you about. So this will support those brackets in the back are the supports that hold the boom up. You can, one of the other pictures that's coming up next, you can see the rods going up to the boom. This will have a large casting that sits in the center up towards the front of the second picture, which has your hoist drum on it, your swing mount gear on it, bolts onto that. There's 2 steam engines that bolt on there. Then in the very back, where those mounts are at, is where the boiler will set. The boiler is 36 inches in diameter and 74 inches tall, and weighs over 3,000 pounds. And it sits on the back, and that's kind of like you see current cranes now with the large counterweights on the back. That was your counterweight to help counterweight the load that was on the front of that to keep that balanced so it would pivot and roll evenly.
And so, real quick to the boiler, I recall that's one of the things that you purchased, right? There's nothing to salvage on the old one?
No, people tell me that there possibly could be, but
is that something you want to mess with?
Yeah, maybe after this is all done, maybe it'd be something to tear into and see if I can build a boiler or get but no, I did think at one point that the boiler was going to be the big stall in this whole project, because when they're talking $30,000 to $35,000 to build a boiler, and fortunately I got hooked up with the people of Mason Steam Club down there, and one of the guys actually collects vertical boilers, so he offered to sell one of them for this project. So I have a boiler currently sitting at home. Needs a little bit of work done to it, but it's the tubes are in good shape, the outside is in good shape, and it actually came off a fire truck.
Really?
Yeah, it came off I believe it was probably like maybe a horse-drawn fire truck. So the boiler ran the pumping system.
I see.
So that's what it was kind of geared up to, and so that boiler, that's what I have at my house right now. So it's going to need a little bit of work, a little bit different configuration for where the gauges, the tricocks, and the sight gauge and all that stuff for the water is going to sit. But it's completely usable for this machine. And this one, there's severe damage in the back corner. You can see where the beam was rotted out, but with the boiler sitting there, the air intake for your dampener door was on the bottom side of that frame, so it would draw air up through the bottom of that frame up to the boiler. So then all the ash would drop down. So a lot of the ash is what rotted out that frame. And then there's also two repairs done to this frame. Actually, in front of that break, it had broke one time before. Then on the opposite side, up a little bit farther right in there, there's a plate, and it's spliced together there. So the shovel was in really rough shape. It's been put through its paces, let's say. So
interesting. So yeah, this is Bob Kelly's shovel, right?
Yep, and I could not be I can't thank the Kelly family enough for letting me run their shovel. I've helped do a lot of maintenance on their shovel when it's running, because everything is, theirs is a 1913 shovel, and it's still, it still breaks down, and there's steam leaks and stuff like that that have to be patched. But they've gave me a good education from cleaning the boiler to cutting up the kindling wood, stacking the firewood, bringing the coal, to starting the fire, tending the fire, adding water to the boiler, which is a unique system because you're actually trying to add water to a pressurized system. So you just got basically a static water tank sitting beside it and a boiler with pressure on it at about 100 pounds, and you've got to add water to it to maintain a certain level. Otherwise, the water will get, you're going to get too hot, and that's when you're going to get a explosion or burn up a boiler. So with the steam injectors that it's got there that basically kind of pull, you use the steam itself to go back into the tank and then draw a vacuum off the water tank. And as the steam goes in, it pulls up some of the water like a siphon, and then we'll put it back into the tank. It's amazing the technology they had back then to do this stuff.
Yeah. What suppose 50 years from now, someone finds some steam shovel or some equivalent, and now they're going through and doing research and they're watching this video. What advice would you give to them?
It's basically a lot of this stuff is, as Bob Kelly told me, you have to be careful and you have to be patient. You can't just go take something if it's stuck and start wailing on it with a hammer and beating stuff. Some of my pictures, I was tapping on stuff with hammers to try to get it to move up, but it's letting someone else do the hammering is the scary part. That's why so much of the stuff, I've just been doing it myself. And I've had a lot of people offer up help. Not that I don't want the help, but then it's with me because I still have a full-time job. So it's hard for me to coordinate and get something set up when people to do other stuff. So, but basically it's if you got a machine, you want to go through it, it's time consuming. You just got to take your time to get stuff freed up. Take a lot of pictures as you're pulling stuff apart, so you can remember how it goes back together. Yeah. Fortunately for me, I've got one in Pennsylvania. I go out twice a year to see it, and I got something to copy, so that helps.
What's up for 2024? What are you planning to do?
I just brought the upper frame in, and I've got all the steel there for the upper frame. That I'll rebuild that and get that all put back together. We'll get all the rivets put in it, and I want to get the two halves mated and set back on together to have that part of the crane going, and then the house. I really would like to have kind of actually kind of planning a family get together to where I can have you, your brother, your mom, your wife, even my granddaughter help paint and build the house for the shovel to get that done. 2025, I'm hoping to have it functioning on steam. And kind of one of my goals is I got two main goals I want to do. One is to possibly take it back to Wixom Lake before it's done, to take a machine over 100 years old to a site it once worked on over 100 years ago. I really don't think it's been done. But if I can get it back and load a truck and put dirt someplace back on the lake.
Hope it doesn't get stuck.
Yeah, and I'm not taking it down the bottom of the lake. We'll put it up high and dry someplace. We're not painting ourselves in a corner this time. I did make the comment to my mom. I said, well, if the lake's not done, so we can take it back down the hole and we can dig. I can get stuck and we can leave it there for my great-grandkids to come get. And I was told, no, I'm not taking it in the lake no more.
That's funny.
And then the other one is to get it out to Pennsylvania where the other one is, and get it sitting beside Bob Kelly's to have two of the only THEW shovels of this style known in existence, side by side digging in a hill. So that's a big one. But transporting it, then on the other hand, that's going to be a
weighty thing to do, yeah.
Your mother already shot me down on that project because I was already looking at semis and trailers because I've got a license to haul heavy equipment. So it was like, and she told me no, I can't buy a semi and trailer.
Cool. All right.
But
well, anything else you want to say for this update? I think this is pretty good.
No, and I can't thank the people enough that support this. I mean, the followers on Facebook and the web page and stuff like that. When you showed me how to look at the analytics on the web page, and seeing that there's 22 different people from 22 different countries that are watching this.
Yeah.
I was I don't know, earlier this summer, I was sitting there and my wife was wondering who I was texting, and I'm in a group chat with some steam people from the Netherlands, and I'm sitting there when we were chatting back and forth. And just recently, I was chatting with somebody, and she asked me again who it was, and it was a guy from I believe it was from Italy, and he was into steam, and he was showing me pictures of projects that he was working on, and it's cool. It's that you get that kind of that bond, like you said, of people that are finding this old stuff and rebuilding it, and it's everybody's got that connection and stuff. So, and then I would like to tell anybody too, if you're interested in old equipment and stuff like this, the show out in Brownsville, Pennsylvania, the Pike National Steam and Tractor and Horse Show, is an awesome show to go to see some of this old equipment that they're still running. I mean, there's this shovel and probably 11 other ones, not steam powered, but diesel or gas, around this digging in the dirt, and it's just awesome to go see.
Well, all right.
Yep, and thanks to everybody for the support and encouragement, and we'll keep tugging away at it. And one of the other unique fun things with this is I'm still friends of the family of their grandfather that owned this, Charlie
The
McKimmey.
original one. Yeah.
And so I'm still friends with the McKimmey family and stuff like that. So it's cool for them. They're learning a lot of history of what their grandfather did back in the day. So, but then thank you for helping out. Hopefully we'll have you back down shortly to get you and your brother again, and we'll
put something else together.
Put your hair up in a ponytail and start back at it again.
Perfect. All right. Well, there we go.